Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. In continuation to our previous discussion on novel Wuthering Heights, I'm going to add some more intellections on some more important events of the novel. At midnight, Catherine gives birth to a daughter named Kathy, 2 months prematurely. Catherine dies 2 hours later. When Nellie brings Heathcliff the news, he seems somehow to already know. He curses Catherine for the pain she has caused, then begs her to haunt and torment him for the rest of his life, even if it drives him mad, just so they can be together. Heathcliff's love for Catherine seems to rise to a different plane, from powerful love to something supernatural, where he feels himself spiritually connected with her. First, he seems to know already when she dies, and then he wishes for a life of torment rather than to be separated from her. Edgar keeps watch over Catherine's body and day and night, while Heathcliff stays out in the garden through the night. Eventually, exhaustion forces Edgar to leave Catherine's side for a few hours, and Nellie allows Heathcliff to see the body. Another contrast with Heathcliff, while Edgar eventually succumbs to exhaustion, as any normal person would, Heathcliff never does any such thing. After Heathcliff leaves, Nellie discovers that Heathcliff has replaced a lock of Edgar's hair that Catherine kept in her locket with his own hair. Nellie finds Edgar's lock of hair and twines the two together in the locket. This incident of uh, lock of both the male characters is very significant. The combined lock of hair mark the two sides of Catherine's personality, the natural and the civilized. The natural side of her character is more suitable or appropriate to her real self. Hindley does not attend Catherine's funeral, her sister's funeral. Though he is invited, Isabella is not invited. Once again, Isabella is treated terribly. Near, near the nearby villagers are surprised when Edgar doesn't bury Catherine in the Linton tomb, but instead by a wall in the corner of the churchyard, with a view over the moors she loved. Nellie then tells Lockwood that Edgar is buried next to Catherine. Lintons have been buried in their family crypt for generations. It is a civilized, high class place to be buried, but Catherine wants to be buried by the Moors because she thinks her soul will be uh, more at peace if she is buried there at Moors. In the next chapter, that is chapter number 17, we find that just after a few days, the funeral, Isabella comes to Thrushcross Grange at a time when she knows Edgar will be asleep in his room. Dishevelled and laughing hysterically, Isabella tells Nellie, who is taking care of the baby Kathy, that she knows Edgar won't allow her to stay but that she needs Nellie's help. Isabella's poor treatment at the hands of Heathcliff have clearly unhinged her, yet she also has the presence of mind to know that Edgar, always conscious of propriety, will never forgive her for running off with Heathcliff. Isabella tells Nellie that Hindley desperately tried to stay sober in order to attend Catherine's funeral, but fell apart the morning of the funeral and started drinking. He succumbed to drinking in order to get rid of the grief, if there is any grief in his mind, of Catherine. Then with Heathcliff was While Heathcliff was out, standing vigil at Catherine's grave, Hindley locked the doors of Wuthering Heights to keep Heathcliff out and told Isabella that he planned to shoot Heathcliff. It is interesting to note how Hindley's plan mirrors what he did when Heathcliff and Catherine, as children, were later to return in chapter 6. As it at it is as if the characters are endlessly repeating the same pattern as they seek revenge on each other. When Heathcliff returned, Isabella warned him of Hindley's plans, but didn't let him into the house. Hindley then tried to shoot Heathcliff from a first floor window, but Heathcliff wrenched away the end of the gun and, in the process, wounded Hindley in the wrist with the blade of the gun's bayonet. Heathcliff then broke into the house through the window and beat Hindley. The next morning, Hindley did not remember what happened, but Isabella reminded him. The two men once again fell to fighting, at which point Isabella ran to Thrushcross Grange. The endless back and forth of revenge and recrimination continues. Nellie then jumps a bit ahead in her story to say that after leaving Thrushcross Grange, Isabella wanted to live near London, where she gave birth to a sickly boy whom she named Linton. Heathcliff eventually learned where Isabella and his son were, but did not go after them. Isabella died when Linton was 12. As a male heir to Isabella, the birth of Linton solidifies Heathcliff's claim on Thrushcross Grange into the next generation. This was also the plan that worked well according to Heathcliff's wishes. Heathcliff dies 6 months after Hindley dies after 6 months uh, of Catherine's death, and Nellie goes to Wuthering Heights to look after the funeral and to bring Hareton back to the Grange. But Nellie is shocked to learn that Hindley died deeply in debt to Heathcliff, who now owns Wuthering Heights. So both the states are now are entitled to Heathcliff. He's the master of these two states. In addition, Heathcliff refuses to let Hareton leave Wuthering Heights and implies that he eventually plans to bring Linton to Wuthering Heights as well. Heathcliff's revenge against Hindley is complete, with the combination of Hindley's death and ownership of Wuthering Heights passing into Heathcliff's hands. Yet, as his continued oppression of Hareton shows and interest in Linton implies, his plans are far from finished. Nelle then adds that Hareton, who should be the master of Wuthering Heights, now is forced to live as the dependent and servant to Heathcliff. Though born into a family of high class, Hareton has had his position stolen from him by Heathcliff. In the next chapter, that is chapter number 18, Kathy, the daughter of Edgar and Catherine, grows into a beautiful, smart, inquisitive, and willful 13-year-old. Edgar doesn't allow her to leave Thrushcross Grange unattended. However, she is entirely unaware of Wuthering Heights or anyone who lives there. One day she hears of some fairy caves at nearby Pennystone Crags and begs Edgar to take her, but Edgar refuses since to get there they would have to pass Wuthering Heights. Kathy is nearly the spitting image of her mother, impulsive and wild. Yet, just as Heathcliff has essentially imprisoned Hareton at the Heights to keep him uncivilized, Edgar keeps Kathy at the Grange to keep her civilized and a proper young woman. Soon after, though, Edgar learns that Isabella is dying and rushes off to London to bring Linton back to the Grange. While he is gone, Kathy manages to escape Nellie and the grounds of the Grange. She heads off towards Penistone Crags, but meets Harriton along the way and immediately likes him. The two spend the day playing together. Kathy and Harriton have a natural and mutual affection for each other despite their opposite upbringing. Nellie chases after Kathy and soon finds her at Wuthering Heights. Kathy refuses to leave when Nellie tells her to. However, she wants to stay with Harriton. Kathy's interest in Harriton turns to contempt, though when she learns from Nellie that Harriton isn't the son of the master of Wuthering Heights. Kathy starts to order Harriton around, who, much to her surprise and indignation, curses back to her. Yet Kathy also have been schooled in the ways of civilization. And just as Catherine was taught to look down upon the rough Heathcliff, Cathy is similarly disdainful of anyone who civil society says is beneath her. A servant of Wuthering Heights then reveals that Harriton is actually Cathy's cousin. Catherine denies it with the argument that her father has gone to get her real cousin, who is the son of a gentleman from London. Unhappy that the news of Edgar's trip to get Linton has been made public, Nellie hushes Cathy by saying that a person can have many cousins of all sorts of stations in life. Cathy seems to think that class is set in stone reality, that if you are in one class, you cannot possibly be related to anyone of another. But as Heathcliff's and Harriton's lives show, this is not entirely true. Though you are born into a certain class, circumstances can change things. Finally, Nellie and Kathy leave. On the trip back to the Grange, Kathy agrees not to tell Edgar about her trip to Wuthering Heights, since the news might anger Edgar so much that he would fire Nellie. As a member of a low class, Nellie is dependent on Edgar's goodwill in order to keep her job. So, in the next chapter, chapter number 19, we find some very nominal progress in the story of the novel, where we find Edgar and Linton arrive at the Grange. Linton resembles Edgar but is weak and whiny. Kathy treats him like a pet or baby, kissing his forehead and stroking his hair. All of the civilized Lintons in the novel are a bit weak and feminine. The character of Linton takes that to an almost grotesque extreme. Edgar tells Nellie that he believes that if Linton is allowed to stay at Thrushcross Grange, he will get stronger because in Cathy he has a playmate his own age. But that night, Joseph arrives from Wuthering Heights demanding Linton. Edgar says he will bring Linton to Heathcliff in the morning. Edgar's concern for Linton is purely good hearted. He wants nothing from the boy other than to help him get stronger. In a way, Edgar wants to take in Linton just as Mr. Earnshaw once took in Heathcliff. In the next chapter, that is chapter number 20, we find a very scant amount of events. Here we find Nellie takes Linton to Wuthering Heights the next morning to make the fearful Linton feel better. Nellie assures him of Heathcliff's goodness, but Heathcliff proves Nellie is lying from the moment he appears. He refers to Linton as his property, calls Isabella a wicked slut, and admits he wants Linton not because he loves him, but because he wants to use him to get Thrushcross Grange. Linton begs Nellie not to leave him with Heathcliff, but she can do nothing but ride away. In contrast to Edgar, Heathcliff has no benevolent feeling towards Linton. even though the boy is his biological son. Real Heathcliff has become completely consumed by his need for revenge. So this was our today's lecture. Uh, in the next lecture, we will be discussing some more chapters from the novel. Thank you very much.